So we're going to have 15 minutes, or is it a 10-minute discussion, and maybe 11. Okay, so all right. So with Jasmina, that I want to thank very much for me personally. As it should be obvious, the talk was absolutely fascinating as regards to the themes. I'm going to say in advance that I will not monopolize, this 11 minutes with me with Jasmina, but we will also take questions from you, because I think it's about time that we can have you contributing. So, if to start this process, I would like Jasmina, if possible, to tell me what is the relationship of art and the state for you today, if such a general position or proposition can exist.
I mean, I think there are definitely multiple. Is this on? Yeah. I think there's definitely multiple discourses happening simultaneously of this, kind of this relationship. So there are some that I'm more interested than in others. And I think, one that I'm particularly not just interested, but I feel that is the most dangerous one is this kind of micro self-censorships that sort of more research-based investigative practices are facing, because, the system, or the kind of the art market system does not take, even institutions are becoming more and more difficult to kind of embrace deeper research projects, which we're really facing a lot. Publications are lacking and so on. So there's kind of this dumbing down of audiences that is really happening in many spaces. And I think that's the danger zone that I am feeling, and, I kind of, want to sort of work sort of against. Or kind of
the work we watched was truly powerful, and I would like you, if possible, to. I felt watching it that you were posing a question almost and the question was whether the state is predisposed to be geared towards totalitarianism. If there is structurally something there, which it's not a position I share, I'm just clarifying it, in advance, because that would make me an anarchist, and I'm not. And so, but I'm very sympathetic and to this position also. And I want to know whether it's this exploration that maybe takes place in what we watched, which was an extremely moving and also incredibly intellectual. I felt deep. Film, so yeah.
Yeah, no, it's Kabako once said every artist compensates what is lacking, and Slovenian artists are really tend to build paradigms of systems. So here I am, and I am really, I am of course very, very interested to kind of enter these systems. And this is the other thing that I use the system's own code of messaging. So I really want to enter these systems, and so all my actions, and this is since we were doing student projects on board trains and on borders and whatever. It was always about delegation of these permits, because I always felt that it's and of course this is what you were kind of saying, that is there a debate to be had, and in a way kind of going through some kind of more kind of historical notions, I kind of find that you can enter them, you can kind of disrupt these things. So for example, when I did the Venice Biennial with the Slovenian Pavilion, I decided, and nobody knew about us, we were super tiny, we were really up against it all, but the idea really was to kind of work with this and kind of work with extreme local specifics. So I worked with failed and successful icons of Slovenian state through the history. From, for example, we had this endemic beetle, which is named after Hitler, and they can't rename it because of Linnaean taxonomy, and now neo-Nazis are kind of trying to find this beetle and sell it to Nazi kind of memorabilia collectors. And so paradoxically, because of this beetle's being hunted down, so because of its name, which is Hitler, it's kind of becoming extinct. So, interesting paradox. Anyhow, so we had this, and on top of, so this was kind of a wallpaper in the gallery, and on top of this, I managed to negotiate a loan from the Slovenian parliament of the artworks which are on the walls, so behind the backs of Slovenian politicians in office. And I only took still lifes, so only flowers, so which were the paintings that were never changed, despite who was the prime minister, despite of the kind of politics of the parliament. And it was like this kind of, this is why I'm just going to this instance, because it's this delegation, or like this kind of ping pong with the actual authority that I'm interested in. I kind of don't, my projects really, they're not guerrilla tactics. I'm really trying to force the authority as much as I can to have an engaged conversation and, kind of work through that.
It's, if I heard you right, if I heard you right during your talk, you mentioned a phrase which will stay with me, which is like modernism as a political tool, and I couldn't understand at that moment whether it was it comes from somewhere, like from a book, or whether it's something that you're using as an idea.
I mean, it's probably.
And I would definitely like to hear more about this.
I mean, I assume I kind of found it somewhere as a quote, but it is that whole idea that, I mean, as we were talking about postmodernism, and it's kind of this idea of time, but like with modernism, the idea was initially, or like on paper, that it was international, and of course it wasn't, and it was always kind of called upon as the kind of the saving grace for the state authority. And so, for example, my project Nada was really dealing with that. So it was looking at three very different European moments where modernism was kind of like called in to, basically tell people, well, this is now how we, not only this is what luxury looks like, but this is how, if you are a modern European, this is how you consume luxury. So, these are, very like deeply rooted. So this idea also political style and taste and so on, it's something that it really goes under your skin. And this is why I'm kind of quite obsessed with this sort of expos and so on. Because like if you think about 1929, Barcelona Expo, so this is when Mies van der Rohe comes on board, and he came there via rich German collectors. So this is the Krefeld Villas. So they endorsed him to come to Barcelona, kind of redesign the idea of, what is now, kind of luxury. And this was not so much through the pavilion, but through the exhibition of silk. So the Germans wanted to take away the sort of the monopoly from the French with silk. So the French exhibition at that point was still very kitsch, very sexual. They had this wooden mannequin with like a little hand that was kind of raising the skirt of another mannequin. And then the Germans come with Mies, which was like this basically a bar with silk hanging. So this is the thing. This is where and also like then kind of ornament and crime is very interesting. But then you kind of go, if you're a savage, you're like the French. But if you're truly modern and avant-garde, you're like the Germans. So these are the things that they're so this is why I'm talking about this kind of scenography and this kind of the ideology of the surrounding and this kind of the production of the style that is like so kind of seeping through to the authority. And of course it's not there for the normal person, but it's kind of this whole thing of like how then style sort of delegates society.
Thank you. And but by complete coincidence, I'm wearing Hugo Expert from Irene Hajdik. Anyway, yeah. So, what's your position on Yugoslavia? I know. Oh, hold on, because we need to. Can she answer that? Okay, so say it by the bell. I'm gonna. Yeah, don't answer it. The question is enough, probably. I would like to thank you, and also hope I have a few moments to take questions or comments from you. Don't be shy.
Sorry, but you said at the very start about the dumbing down of audiences. I was wondering if you could very quickly expand upon what you mean by that. Were you you also mentioned the lack of depth in academic research. So when you say lack of depth and dumbing down, are you talking specifically about like people's lack in actually questioning the power of the state or actually undermining, or are you referring to something slightly different when you say that?
No, thanks. It's kind of like try to find the right way. And the main thing is that audiences are not stupid. you know. General public is not stupid. And I just feel as an artist who deals with like quite complex projects that, you know, how these projects are then communicated to the audiences, you know, people are afraid that it's going to be too complex for them. And it's a bit like, I think that this is probably also why I like film so much. So for example, if you have a reveal shot and you cut it short, the audience kind of goes, oh, but hang on a minute, we're used for this shot to continue. Because, you know, you have this idea, like, you know, that you know, it's just that audiences grow with you. And, you know, if you don't present complex works and, you know, if art institutions don't kind of facilitate that, you know, you're kind of really, you know, you're just really castrating the cultural capital, in my opinion. And it's been, I mean, it's kind of like partly to do also obviously with funding and so on, you know, and I think that, you know, kind of the public programs are being cut down, you know, education, art education is being cut down. And I mean, I think academic research and sort of, you know, university conditions, that's a totally different thing. I mean, I don't want to enter into that because I don't work in university, so I don't feel it's my place to comment. But, you know, I can just say that, you know, as an artist researchers, working with art institutions, also nobody understands what the research part is, and that's kind of the 90% of the project. But artists are expected to work on that in their own time, with their own money, which just doesn't work. So, you know, we really are seeing, you know, kind of really like a lessening of artistic practices that work in that way, where they're just kind of like moving territories. So that's what, yeah.
Okay, do we have further questions or comments? Right.
Hello, I hope this isn't a stupid question. I haven't seen your videos yet, but I'm hoping to later today. You said in your talk about the problem of people in the West exoticizing remnants of communism or the East in general. I'm wondering how you tread that line in your work when dealing with Yugoslavia and ideas surrounding that.
So I mean, it's of course it's like all over the spectrum. It's not just with former Yugoslavia that this happened, but, you know, obviously I come from there, so, you know, I kind of like just kind of felt it directly. Where, you know, whether it was what did we have? We had Harold Zeman did Blood and Honey. There were like about 3 big exhibitions on the Balkans about maybe 10 years ago, and then it all kind of stopped.
You probably know this history better than me.
And then it came back.
I remember the curators.
Yeah. But and not that it was bad, but, you know, this whole idea of like, you know, how. I mean, you know, I studied at Goldsmiths. I did my MA there, and, you know, so we were like very prone to, and I was really shocked how, you know, an academic situation was kind of like really pushing you toward this, like embracing this geopolitical exoticism. And I mean, now I understand why, because, you know, this is what kind of like the you know, kind of the marketable aspect is in a way. And what this did to, and it's not a problem this happens, that's just the market, you know, fuck it, that's what it is. The problem that this created for us, and for many people kind of coming from sort of non-Western territories, was that, you know, we did not sort our own histories out. We did not have an archive. You know, like, for example, all this kind of Yugoslav modernism, this was not properly researched. So if you have this kind of tourist gaze of the market coming in and kidnapping these models out for pure formalist reasons, you're actually doing an extreme damage to kind of historical memory of a nation. And speaking of Yugoslavia, also, we now have 6 nations that don't really know who they are even. So it's this kind of totally disrupted territory where, you know, our archives are just being lost, they're not being like properly dealt with. There's always this kind of whole issue with, you know, quotations and language and access, and things are disappearing, you know. So this is why I kind of really wanted to kind of try and work with it. And it's really about ethics as well, you know, that I kind of feel like, so there was like a period which kind of also had to happen. There was like a lot of kind of reformatting of these histories through pure formalism, especially in sculpture, maybe like 15 years ago, which is kind of the revival of modernism everywhere anyway in contemporary art. But what was happening with our stuff was, for example, you know, people would be referencing these structures and sculptures, but not at all talking about society, not at all talking about what they were representing. And it's, yeah.
No, it's, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just wanted to say that, for me at least, how you work this subversion of architecture with performance, which I perceived as a medium almost. A subversion is a real medium where you will transfer architectural values onto dance and choreography. It's extremely interesting, and I wonder if this does have a tradition in, what should I say, Yugoslavian modernism. I mean, Yugoslavia is not a country without artists, and as you said, because I mean, there's Sanja Ivekovic, there's all sorts of people who. So there is a lot, an awful lot, I would say. Yeah.
There's an amazing project called "How Ideology Moved Our Collective Body." Do you know it? So this is fantastic, and this was like proper research on these parades and I think we're like well finished. But it's exactly this kind of this relationship as well of the collective body, the movement of the collective body, the choreography, within these spaces of well, not just spaces of power. I guess it's also the spaces that the society itself produced.
We could be discussing for a long time the body and architecture. You showed imposing architecture that kind of takes your breath away. And so if we don't have an urgent question, I feel that we're called to wrap it up, really. And this further. Okay, so this was just for us to stop. Okay, fine. So do we have more comments or questions? Yes. Yes, you. All right.
I think you were looking at modernist ideas quite a lot. Obviously, historical examples of this kind of architecture and the kind of power then that these kind of architectures have, the performative aspect of architecture itself. I'm wondering, because I'm reminded of a lot of kind of contemporary projects. Say, for example, I know that the airport in Doha, for example, has very similar architecture. There's kind of a lot of marble, and I feel like there's a lot of connection between maybe countries now in other parts of the world kind of adapting and taking on these kind of aesthetics and this kind of performative aspect of architecture. Are you looking at more contemporary, examples as well, or?
I think one of for me, the most shocking, the most shocking reminder of these kind of patriarchal structures is, and what really, really doesn't change, is the equation between the facade and the interior. And there's always a time lapse. So whatever building of kind of state authority you look at, if you look at the facade and the interior, I'm now talking about sort of government representative buildings, there's always this kind of different space, because the facade is for the public and the interior is for the actual people in power. And it's something that is, you can really trace it from whenever, even, especially in modernism, you would have, in the kind of Eastern European spaces, you would have these facades which would be super kind of modernist and so on, and the interior was you would walk into, I mean, I'm not to exaggerate, but at least sort of, 30, 40 years in the past, because that's what those people are kind of used to kind of seeing. And just to kind of go to the whole kind of Middle East, so what's really fascinating with the UN, with the Palace of the Nations, where the gift, this part was filmed. So this was a palace which was created, in the late 1920s, 30s. They were doing these interiors, so every member state was donating a part of the interior, okay? So they were all very, I mean, you saw some of them that are still installed. They're extremely politically problematic. They're very racist. There's that tapestry, which was a gift from Belgium from 1935, that has the kind of women representing the continents. And of course, all the savage women are naked, and Europeans are clothed. So it's just full of these contradictions, right? But what's happening now is that the Middle Eastern countries are now making new gifts. So Qatar and UAE are coming in, and they're basically erasing this style. So, and this is where I think this kind of renaissance are super interesting. So, for example, Qatar made this big, one of the biggest sort of auditoriums that has, white leather seats. So it's like Bedouins in the desert. The carpet is color of the sand. The ceiling is blue. So you kind of think it's just the blue, but it's not. It's real-time projection from the sky, from above there. It's bonkers. And and they're just erasing this kind of early modernist style of European states. So again, you could really kind of have this really nice sort of metaphor of the changing of the kind of relations with the global relations, really. Again through style, and again through this erasure of past, this kind of historical relationships.
Okay. Further questions or comments, please? I think it was just censored by the MC. Is that it? Are we done? Our time is up. Okay.